Everybody. Welcome to the Let's Take a Ride podcast. Captain John here with my riding buddy Gunny, and we're gonna this will be part two, even though this is episode three of season five. This is part two on impacts with animals. And so before we get into Gunny's story with riding, into his story with the impacts of animals, I just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Um, we're on Spotify and on YouTube, whichever platform you're watching. It really helps us grow this channel, and obviously it keeps me motivated to do this. I'm going to try to get some interesting stories. I mean, you don't really hear much, watch a lot of motorcycle videos, listen to podcasts. We don't hear much about impacts with animals, but I think it's a scary, real thing. I think more of us have done it than we care to admit. So, anyways, well, Gunny, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. I got a picture to send you too. I've got two front forks on my Tenere right now. New forks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Nice.
yeah, so I think the rest of the parts are going to be here Saturday. So I might have a bike on Sunday.
You
So
might be able to ride it before the end of the year.
I know. Oh man, I'd be so happy. So anyway, you moved here to Tennessee, what, about a decade ago or close to that?
2018.
So your riding career, I know, started years ago, but it was you were on the west side of the U.S., weren't you?
I
Or
had been
no?
there. I was
Okay,
stationed in California, but most of it's been East Coast.
okay, East Coast. Well, tell me, where did you grow up, and what did you start riding, and what type of riding did you do?
I was born and raised in Naples, Florida, so down Southwest Florida,
Okay.
hurricanes, alligators, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
And the way we grew up was on bicycles. That was our modes of transportation, our means of escape. So we absolutely used bikes to go everywhere from fishing to, getting lost, whatever we did. It was
I
on
relate to
bicycles
that.
every
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
So that was probably the catalyst of it. I really didn't get into motorized vehicles when I was young. I had a friend that had an 86 CR 125 that he let me two up with him once. So that was my first experience on a two stroke, racing cars down the side of the road with him. So that was my experience for motorcycles. Didn't really think anything of it until I got in the Marine Corps and on my own and decided I want a motorcycle. I don't even know what prompted me. So I picked up a 1986 Yamaha Phaser. So it's a very rare bike that nobody really knows about. I had no idea what I was getting, but it was twelve
Yeah.
hundred dollars, so I was all in
That the price is made you get it. I know
for
how that
sure.
goes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're familiar with the VMAX, they call it the Baby Max. It's basically half a motor of a VMAX is what it
Okay.
is. So that's the bike of that I started riding on. Learned in the streets in the neighborhoods that I lived around. Kind of just figured it out. Took a couple
Yeah.
spills. Got tangled up with water and sand and gravel, and figured out
Mm-hmm.
that I might want to learn how to really do this if I'm not going to hurt myself. So I took a basic rider's course for the Motorcycle Safety Foundation at a community college, and this was in 2000 because I wanted to improve my skills. So
Yeah.
I forked out the money, took that course, helped me immensely on figuring out what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong. So that was kind of the foundation of my journey on motorcycles.
Yeah, yeah. And so started with the phaser. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember, when I was growing up, we're kids, some buddies got a moped, and, I would take it out, but figuring out, you talked about the bicycles. Yeah, I just figured, nobody taught me how to ride. It was kind of going out, like I would skip class in college and steal my roommate's bike, I probably should have been going to class
Right.
while he was in classes. I was out, wrecking his bike in the yard and whatnot. But anyways, just kind of learning how to do it. So, all right. So you kind of taught yourself on a phaser, took your basic rider's course, and got
I did.
licensed.
I did. Learned real quick about water and S curves and gravel and corners. Kind of had some hard knocks there to kind of help me reel myself in a little bit on my riding style. It evolved into cruisers a little bit. I got into sport bikes for a while. That's a long story, but the short of it is in about 14 days and 3 tickets, decided that sports bike is probably not a good place for me to play. So I made a deal with the judge and I said, if I sell this thing, will you kind of let me go? And he said, if you sell them all, I'll let you go. So I took that offer, sold my last sports bike, which was a Suzuki 1000 is what I had. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, just decided it's not a great place for me. So passed those along and
Yeah.
shifted gears at that point.
Yeah, that's what's kept me. I mean, not that I don't like to have lots of power, but that's what's kept me away from sport bikes is too many tickets I would be racking up. Because you mean if you've got that horsepower, you're going to be tempted,
Absolutely.
and then the others, I definitely kill myself on one of them. So
Agreed. Yep. We were
I'm not
we were
responsible enough to have that much horsepower.
apparently you and me both.
So, when did you get into dirt bikes? Because I know you got into that.
So that was actually West Coast. I was stationed in Camp Pendleton, which is Oceanside, California, just south of LA. And my little one got big enough to get on wheels, motorized wheels. So he was on a little four-wheeler, and I was like, well, I need something to kind of chase along with him. So I'll just go ahead and find a dirt bike. So I got a deal. It was $1,500 for a YZ250
Hmm.
two-stroke and a 426 Yamaha 426. So it was the pair of the bikes. The 426 was running, and the 250 was seized. So I just sold that, and it almost recouped all the funds that I for the deal that I went into. But I had a running 426 for like $700.
That's
So
a fast bike.
I had no idea what I was getting into, or what a pain in the butt it would be to kickstart that dang
Oh
thing.
yeah, yeah.
It's got
Hmm.
a decompression lever on it, and if you're not familiar with how to use it, boy, you will kick it all day long and go nowhere. So that was my first dirt bike that I had, and I brought that to North Carolina, which eventually became my next duty station. I happened to move into a place where the guy next to me rode 450s motocross. So it was real easy. He had dirt bikes in the yard. I just moved in with a dirt bike. Hey, man, where do you ride? What's going on? So he kind of took me under his wing, got me out on the track, moving around a little bit. Long story short, learned that's not a great place for me either. So yeah, I cleared a double and ended up off the track when I came down. And yeah, I kind of tore my leg up and embedded sand in my back. And
Oh,
yeah, it was a trip to the emergency room, saline to remove it from my back, the sand. That was an interesting experience, I'll say. And
yeah. I don't want to learn that one.
it's been a long, hard road, as you can kind of tell. Fortunately, down at the end of the road was the guy that rides woods, and he rode KTM 300s.
Mm.
So he's like, "Hey, man, why don't you come out in the woods and see if you like it better?" And I said, "Okay." So I went out there, rode with him a couple times. Eventually, bought a 1998 300 off him that ran really well, and that was kind of my bike for a while. So I got into woods in North Carolina and rode there quite a bit. Eventually, brought that bike and everything else here to Tennessee when I moved here, and just decided that it was time for an upgrade. So the 300 went out, and just went into various things from 4 strokes to 300 2 strokes, basically. Had a 250 XC for a while, started to get into the fuel, or excuse me, the oil injected bikes that KTM had. And so it's a long evolution. And now it's Cove is what I ride.
Yes. So I know you have the 800. Do you still have the 450 as well?
I do, yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
So I bought the 450 because the 800 wasn't out yet. I was seeing a lot of the hype from overseas, and I knew, well, to kind of take 2 steps back. A friend of mine reached out, and he had a T7, he had a Tenere. He's like, "Hey, man, you got to get in this adventure riding thing." And I said, "All right, well, let me find a bike." So the bike that I found was a 14 Triumph Tiger 800 XC.
Yeah.
So beautiful bike, low miles, hard cases. Like it was set up to adventure of what I thought adventuring was, or at least what I had seen adventuring was. So I bought that bike, rode it. I put some Shinko 705s on it, and we hit LBL a couple of times and figured out real soon that that's probably not the bike for my style.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and adventure bike ride is such a broad category because a lot of people, well, I mean, not to disparage on any bike brand, but we'll just mention BMW. So you get the GSA, right, and it
yeah,
never leaves the pavement, which is fine. I
right.
mean, adventure bike, the riding position is great as a touring bike,
It
but
is.
I have definitely found it's like because I had my first adventure bike after I went from dual sports to the thumpers to the multi cylinders was a V-Strom 1000, the DL 1000, and
Okay.
it was I love the bike, but it's not. I was way over riding it for the type of stuff I like to do, and it wasn't the bike for me. And then the 1090 that I had after that. Uh, I just knew in the back of my mind it was going to get me into some big trouble because it was just way too competent off road with way too much horsepower and way too heavy of a bike. And when you've got the intoxicating horsepower and a 535-pound bike that has suspension that just wants to launch it, that
Yep.
it's like if I come down wrong, I'm going to kill myself on this. So. Very
I
happy. Yeah. Very happy on the tenor right now. So I was worried it was going to have too much, not enough horsepower, but it suits me well on the adventure bike. But we like to get into stuff that's probably a little bit dirtier than a lot of people do on adventure bikes.
I would say we definitely fall on that side of the spectrum, but I
Yeah.
also kind of think adventure has evolved really a lot in the last 5 years. It
Yes.
was, an old guy on a GS like you're talking about, maybe hitting a dirt road. That used to be adventuring,
Yeah.
and now you've got stuff like heavy enduro out there, and you've got Pole out there on his Tenere. You have people doing some pretty wild things on some big bikes.
Well, after we get through this series, I'm going to talk about some heavy enduro stuff. But something interesting as I was looking for forks for my bike, one of the guys that I was going to buy his old or his unused 25 forks off of contacted me. He's like, "Hey, you want some Race Tech forks? I'm taking my Race Techs off now." And I'm like, "Ah, I just bought some forks."
Ooh.
But I didn't realize this. He's like, "Yeah, I got a connection over in Europe from the Works Yamaha guy on the Works Tenere suspension over there." That I was like, and he was telling me about it. I was like, "Oh my goodness, he's got more money." He's just throwing money at suspension on the Tenere. I was like, well, that'd be interesting to see stateside. But
So
anyways, yeah. So yeah, on the Kobe's, and I love your wrap on your bike, by the way. It
thank
looks
you.
really
Thank you.
nice. So tell me what happened because you had just gotten the Kobe. You had not had it long. So tell me the trip and leading up to your little incident with a four-legged animal and what happened.
Absolutely. So I got the Kobe in March. That's the first shipment that came to America of 800s. So I picked that up in Colorado from a buddy of mine that has a Kobe maintenance facility, and he works on all bikes. But I had him. We kind of put it together. I literally put 6 miles on that bike, and then I tore it completely apart. Wheels, exhaust, intake, tune, just about everything that we could. The bash plate, to get it up to snuff for my style of riding. So I
Yeah.
really don't know what a stock Kobe kind of rides like, but I do know a lot of people do like a stock Kobe. So I picked that up and I brought that home. That was in early March. I rode the Chattahoochee BDRX at the end of March. Was my first trip with the bike. Really liked it. The suspension probably could be a little stiffer for all the gear that I had on, and I just didn't really dial that in while I was riding. So that was me. That was user error there. But it was just a fabulous machine, lots of power, which I love. And we talked, it can be very dangerous, but I think we're finding our limits of where we can play and stay out of trouble for the most part. Um, but I had recently taken over a new position and was an instructor for the Motorcycle Safety Foundation. and they had curriculum for an adventure instructor. And that's really where my heart lies, is in the dirt and on the off-road stuff. So the on-road was just kind of a springboard for me to get to what I wanted, which was the ADV and the dirt bike portion of their curriculum. So they had a course in just south of Boise,
Yeah.
Idaho, and it was in late May. So I headed out there, made a trip of it, rode in Colorado and Utah on the way, tried to ride everywhere I could on the way. And so it was a 3-day course. We were at the last day of the course. So it was Sunday, 7:30 in the morning. I'm riding in to finish the course, which is us actually teaching real students is how they finish their courses for instructors. So 7:30, cruising in, 2-lane road, nobody's awake. Road's completely empty. I'm just cruising along. I got 15 miles roughly from where I'm staying to the location. And I get on the last road. It's a long dirt road out to the training facility, which was an MX park where they had the training. And so cruising in, I remember looking at my GPS and it said I'm about 0.5 miles from my destination. So, all right, I'm getting close. So I kind of roll off the throttle as I come up over a hill. And as I eclipse the hill, we are in the middle of farm country, and there is a herd of cows on the other side of this hill. I'd
Oh
never seen a
God.
herd of cows in the road before. Obviously, not something we see or deal with on the East Coast as far as free ranging
No,
is
no, there's
not a thing
cattle.
over here.
Yeah, cattle gates. There's no open range out here.
Right. And if they're in the road, it's a mistake. Somebody
Hmm.
forgot to close the gates type of thing. Whereas out there in the West, like, hey, it's free game for them to just roam as they please. So I came up over that hill, saw what I was getting into. I had nowhere to go because it was, from side to side was all cow. So I remember standing up, getting up on my pegs and kind of getting into attack position. I remember slamming on both brakes as much as I could, and the cows just start zigzagging in front of me, kind of like a squirrel. When you see him in the road, you're like, just get off. And he goes every way, but out of your way. So smashed into one of the cows. And then I remember waking up in the middle of the road
So it knocked
and
you out.
unconscious. Yes, sir.
Okay. Wow.
Yep. It put me down. I heard a motorcycle coming. And so that's what kind of brought me to. So they heard me at the training coming. And when they didn't hear my bike anymore and they didn't see me, they were kind of like, well, where did he go? So one of the guys like, well, I'm going to backtrack and see what happened to him because, it'd been several minutes and they hadn't seen me and I was only half a mile away. So he came back and found me in the middle of the road and put his bike at the top of the hill to block traffic so nobody would come over the hill into me, and got off for the assist and kind of got me back on my feet. So I got up. We managed to get my bike up. I got on the bike and I rode the rest of the way into the facility. And I was talking to him, just kind of told him what happened. They're like, well, you should probably go to the hospital. And I said, well, I understand what you're saying, but I drove 2,000 miles to come take this course, and I'm not leaving until I got a certificate in my hand. So I said, all right, well, if you do your teachings, you're kind of good. So they put a sling on me. Somebody took a strap off their moto luggage there and built a mock sling for me to strap my arm up. And I actually taught my class with my arm in a sling to complete my course there. And once I got done, I'm like, hey guys, I'm going to go ahead and head out now. They're like, oh, we've been wondering when you're going to leave. So went to the VA hospital. They pushed me to a civilian hospital because I was unconscious. They pushed me to the trauma unit. So I was unconscious, separated right shoulder, and then bruised ribs was what happened to me in that transaction there.
Okay. So I saw the riding gear you had on because
Mhm.
you have it displayed in at your riding clinic, which I took a class there
Yeah.
to get my, just because I've never been certified. So yeah. And you were gracious enough to provide that. But I'm going to share the screen for your school real quick, if I can figure this out. But for all those, so you have your own school and you're now that's what you're out there to gain your adventure certification, but you do street adventure and dirt at Learn to Ride TN, correct?
This is correct. Yes, sir. So I took over that facility in last December. So it's been a year. And so it's been a huge learning curve as far as taking over a motorcycle business. teaching students. It's been a wild ride. I really, truly love what I do. I think I've got the best job in the world. I would love to argue anybody the fact that their job is to help people learn how to ride a motorcycle and put a smile on their face, and they have a
Well,
better job than that.
I think you do have the best job in the world. What's neat? So, I ask people this, and so I know. And you were fully geared up. I mean, you had on your adventure. So, and obviously it protected you as well as you're going to be protected. So, you had a helmet. I think you had an LS2 helmet
I did.
and a first gear jacket.
Matching pants as well. Yes, sir.
Okay,
So
and so that kept you from the abrasions and
it
probably
did.
from breaking your arms and helped. And you had on, I'm guessing, full MX boots or touring boots or
I had adventure boots on.
yep,
I did. I had leather adventure boots on. I generally ride if I'm going most places. I use Tech Sevens. I do run full moto, and I don't care how silly I look when I walk in the store with boots on, like whatever Frankenstein's coming through. Look out, because I've since that incident absolutely become a huge believer in gear. As you said, I was completely geared up. I had a good helmet on. I had
yeah,
everything that I could do possible. I have could say that previous to that, I have definitely not invested so well into my gear, and I obviously have really changed the way I see things. And Snell helmets now. You were right about the gear. It did take the abrasion. It was Kevlar reinforced, so it ate through the
yeah.
first layer of
Well,
it.
first gear
But
is
it didn't.
great equipment. So yeah, yeah. Well, when I hit that deer, and their jacket's ruined. Insurance paid for a new one, but it was a arrow stitch Darien jacket. I mean, I rode with you the day before, so
You did.
that same jacket, and I slit and it shredded it, but it did its job. My problem is the dang riding pants. I decided I was like, oh, I'm just riding highway home. I didn't put them on, and boy, I had on my riding boots, but I didn't have on my
Right.
riding pants, and so my knees, So what is this? December. So it's been 2 months. It's been 60 days since I hit that deer, and I still have some scabs on my knees. Uh, yeah,
It's hard, all the gear all the time, and as an instructor and slash coach, we see people riding out there, in flip flops and tank
yeah.
tops,
No,
and
that's ridiculous.
yeah, I agree, and I understand it's hot and it's not good. The other side of that coin is what happened to us, and of no fault of either of ours in what we did. It wasn't poor riding skills, it wasn't excess speed, it wasn't any of those things. It was something well beyond our control. However, we ended up at high speed, on the asphalt, and it will shred you, like you said.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so something good did come out of this. So, and I'm normally at GAT, and
Mhm.
the only time I'm not, I always have a riding jacket on in boots, over the ankle boots, sometimes they're work boots. I'm not in adventure, but over the ankle boots, but, in usually at least jeans, but, if I'm just around town, but I usually, if I'm going any distance, I'm full of gear. But my wife, she's gotten back into riding this past year after about 4 or 5 years. She'd been real resistant on gear, and because it's hot or it's uncomfortable. When she saw it, because she was right behind me on her bike when that happened. Now she won't go out without fully geared up. So I'm glad for that because I don't want her because I'm like you don't want skin grafts, you know. But the thing is, she's like, I'm not scared of dying, but she realized she saw me, and she's like, I don't want to be suffering in pain like he is, you know.
Agreed, agreed. And I try to convey that to our students. And of course, if you've never experienced that or kind of seen it firsthand, it's kind of one of those, oh, that'll never happen to me. Well, you ride long enough, there's two types of
Yes,
riders.
yeah.
So
Well, so I think about my injuries. I broke my toe in my yard once with flip flops on because I bought my wife a KLR 250. This was, a decade ago, and I'm right just scooting around the yard. Ah, this is fun, and of course, wet grass and went down, broke my damn pinky toe, and I felt like such a fool. Of course, I didn't go to the doctor. Broke. pinky toe, but I was like, I'm such an idiot, But that's all it takes. You don't have to go anywhere to mess up.
Very true. And
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be high speed. And that's, even goofing around in the yard without a helmet. Yes, you can, but like you're an example there is that something could happen, that could end up with you slamming your head into something. And that's all it takes.
yeah,
Uh, I've lost a friend actually at 35 miles an hour. He was fully geared up. He was on a motorcycle and he got hit from behind at 35 miles an hour and it killed him. He went into a coma and died. And again, he was fully prepared for what happened to him, but you can't always tell what's going to happen or what's
yeah.
coming your way. So
Yeah, I mean, and we're just trying to do the best we can to mitigate the risk. It doesn't take it away. I had a, I didn't lose conscious, but I definitely had a concussion. Had all the symptoms of one, but I didn't look at my helmet for about 2 weeks. When I looked at it, sure enough, big old bash on the side of it. And so, now that's going into retirement. I've got me a new helmet coming in. That's what you're
sure,
supposed to do when, they're
right.
not, they're compromised now. But, I have been down on a gravel road one time and slid along the side of my face. And thank God for a full, what we wear is a full face helmet, and there was a time that I never did wear a full face helmet. I'd wear a 3/4 or a half helmet, and I'm like, never would I do that now. In my younger years, when I had a gold wing, I figured all the old men like to wear their New Balance and their jorts, their jorts and their white T-shirt. That I would be okay in shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops too, or my New Balance shoes on a gold wing. And a friend of mine who I'll be interviewing this weekend was touring the U.S. and he wouldn't. Well, he's like, "Hey, y'all want to go for a day ride today?" Because they're with us for a week or two, and he's like, "Don't go out." He's like, put on some boots and some blue jeans. I mean that he wouldn't even ride with me until I did that. And because I was being an idiot like all the other, and see that here's the thing, what you're doing with the safety course with having the riding schools is if nobody teaches you, you don't know until you find out the hard way or yeah. And
Very
so
true.
I like your mannequin with your riding gear and the results.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a visual, a student can see what actually happens to somebody when they go down and where the abrasions come from and stuff like that. So I'm hoping it'll prompt at least some thought. And, generally it's younger people getting started and, gear is expensive to get into motorcycling. It
Yes, it
is very
is.
expensive. People think, oh, I'm going to save money because I'm going to, get 10 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour more with a motorcycle. But by the time you add boots, helmets, jacket, gloves, everything else, well, you're really not saving a whole lot. It's just more
No,
joy in your life, in my
no.
opinion.
But if they're smart, they can be a thrifty shopper and get quality gear for more affordable. There's closeouts, like motorcycle closeouts, but eBay, I've been buying a lot of my gear. A lot of people buy their $1,000 gear,
Mhm.
and it's been rarely or hardly ever used. Yeah, it might be 5 or 10 years old, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. And so, like riding pants, you can go up a couple of quality levels and get some used gear. If you want some.
I agree. The first gear that I had on was actually purchased from Marketplace. An individual
Yeah.
wore it a handful of times. And so I got a heck of a deal on it. Fit perfectly. I actually missed that gear because it was a nice set. But I agree with you. If you look around, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that buy a lot of expensive gear and don't really use it much, which is great for us, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. Well, that's what they do is I think they're gonna and that's like this with motor. So for in the United States, motorcycling is more of a hobby, whereas in the rest of the world, it's more of a mode of transport. And so
Right.
just like with anything, people get into hobbies, they think, and they got to have all the accessories, and they realize the hobby isn't for them. And
Sure.
the gear just sits around and eventually they sell it or their spouse wants to get rid of it, and that's where it's really good when the spouse doesn't know what they have and is just clearing out the closet.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're
Yep,
like,
I
oh,
agree.
you want $50 for this $800 jacket? Sure, sure, here you go.
Yep,
Yeah,
I agree. So I agree. If you try, it's out there. You can
yeah.
find it. I guess the only thing I would say is, spend some good money on a newer helmet. Get a
Yes,
nicer newer helmet. Protect that
always,
head. It is the
always.
most valuable investment that you can make is protecting that head, because concussions, comas, death generally comes from the head. It's not other body parts that kills
Yeah,
you. It's head injuries that normally kill you. So
yeah, yeah. And you're gonna, I know I took a smack, and apparently you took a big smack, and you had a good helmet on, and you're still knocked unconscious. So that's scary. Have you? So after that happened, were you a little bit gun shy getting on the bike after that?
well, it's interesting that you ask, because I actually did an interview with Daniel the Duke there, and he asked me that, and I had not gotten back on the bike because I was still in the process of healing. Unfortunately, I only had 2 months on the Cove 800X before I was down and I couldn't ride. So a majority of the rest of my riding season, it was either no riding or it was small bike riding. So I got this brand new bike. I put maybe 1,000 miles on it, and I couldn't touch it anymore. So it was kind of driving me crazy. So when I talked to him, I was excited to get back on that bike. I just love that motorcycle. I love the way it sounds, and to just see it sitting in the garage was kind of driving me nuts.
I bet.
So I didn't think there was going to be any backlash from that. So I got out in the dirt, loved it, had fun, was totally good there. I've recently got back out on the road and started doing some intense road riding, and really have not enjoyed the road as much as I used to. So I didn't think there would be some scars from that, but there are absolutely some scars from that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know from my incident, this falls are gonna, I was driving. Give you an example. I'm going to the grocery store with my wife going down the 4 lane through Manchester, Tullahoma, over in this part of the state. And there's a dead deer on the side of the road, and it had been dragged. It was a big one, and you could see the drag mark. He got caught under a car, but they're
Mhm.
everywhere. And I look out my window, and I'm in a neighborhood right off the square, and I've got I got a mama and its baby deer that was born late living in my bushes. I'd look out my window and they're just up and down right behind my, through the neighborhood. They're neighborhood deer. And this rut, when I hit that deer, the only thing I can think of, and um, you know, and I didn't realize the rut. I should have realized this because I spent a lot of my life hunting deer. But I know the rut is in Tennessee here, especially the southern part where I'm at, doesn't really start till about the end of November. You know, but apparently they were in rut up there, and it was a younger deer that I hit. It was so it was either its first year or a year and a half year old. You know, wasn't really big, but it was in a full sprint. I didn't even see it. It came out. All I saw, the image I have is, if you can imagine it, with outstretched legs going both ways. It was perfectly flat. Legs were completely outstretched, like it was in a full gallop. Is probably was not used to a buck coming after it who was hot and horny, and was freaking out, and was, because they'll move. Now, I mean, that's the rut. They move, and that's what, they chase the does. That's what makes it great for hunting. But it was chasing that doe straight across that highway, and I didn't even have time to even think about reaching for the brakes. I was listening to a podcast, and I was just, and down I was, and it hurt. And
Absolutely.
yeah, but the adrenaline. So you were probably running on adrenaline after you came to, and you're like, I'm going to finish this dang clinic out. And you were probably, once that adrenaline wore off, you probably needed to chomp on some ibuprofen.
Just a few, just a
Just a
few.
few. That's what
It,
happened.
yeah.
I was about 30 miles down the highway, stopped for gas after that, and then I started to hurt bad. I was like,
Mhm.
uh-oh. I was like, I've done some damage. I think I've cracked my ribs. So I don't know how I got home. The bars are like that, just It was bad. Uh,
Pretty amazing that you rode that bike the rest of the way.
oh, it was it
Yeah,
was it was miserable. It was not the most pleasant ride home. That was 200 miles. So
I can understand.
yeah, so yeah, I'm a little bit. I think I'll see next year. I've always this time of year been a little bit gun shy, so to speak. Um, and I think my early morning and late afternoon when they're moving, I think it's going to limit some of my riding, or at least I'm going to be going to have to be hyper aware of my surroundings.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And like I
and
said, off road, it didn't really change much. I got
yeah,
back off road, and generally we'll go down, but it's at what, 15, 20 miles an hour or something, or a tip over. It's nothing major. So you get bounce back up, dust off, and kind of keep going. Where you have something like this, you're traveling at, road or highway speeds when you contact something. And it's not as forgiving. It's going to ruin your day for sure, if not your riding season.
so you hit this cow. How fast do you think you were going? About 40?
It was over 40, so I would say yeah, somewhere 45 ish, 45 or 50, because I was rolling off the throttle as I came
Yeah.
over that hill. So, like I said, it's really changed my on road experience, and I hadn't really known until I got back on the road and I started riding on the road again. And like you said, just really kind of looking around corners, and now you're watching the bushes instead of the roads, and it's just kind of taken some of the joy I had for road riding out just a little bit. And those wounds might heal with time, and as the confidence comes back.
Yeah.
It's not every time you go and you smash into an animal on the road. It's not as common as it's, I would guess, for each of us. It's been once in a lifetime experience thus far with many years of riding, but it does happen. So
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, I mean, I, I think everybody's going to come into impact. I think if you're in the South with a deer, most of the time it's with, with a car, right?
mhm,
I have
mhm.
never hit a deer. I've seen other vehicles hit a deer. I've never seen a vehicle hit a cow or heard of one, and you're the first on that. Um, but it just happened. My luck ran up and I was on a bike when I did it. And I wasn't even, it was a 55-mile-an-hour road. I was doing between 55 and 60. I wasn't flying. And that's what's so odd is there was plenty of visual. They had the road cleared back. But something I'm going to keep this in my mind too. The highway patrolman was coming by and he imparted some wisdom. It was a new highway south of Beattyville. I forget the highway number, but it was one of the newer ones. All the regular highways up in that part of that state are a little twisty and curvy. Well, this one they had just cut a big swath. It was kind of straight,
Mhm.
and he said we get a lot of the highway patrolman said they get a lot of deer killed on that highway because it's a new highway and they're used to it not being there, as they
Sure.
haven't changed their movement yet. And so that made a lot of sense. So it's going to make me more aware if I'm on a new state highway, a 2 lane, just because they've
Sure.
cleared away from the road doesn't mean they're not going to be coming flying out at full brake speed versus a road that's been there for 50 years. The deer know not to, they're a little bit more cautious with it.
Sure. And just like finding them in neighborhoods, that used to be their habitat at one time. So sometimes they just don't leave the area. They don't move. They try to adapt and survive there to their detriment, unfortunately.
Well, absolutely, because the my yard deer, there used to be a bunch of woods behind us that backed up to a state park, and those woods, about 6 or 7 years ago, were cut, and a subdivision popped up that's been there about 4 or 5 years. So the deer didn't go anywhere. They just live in our yards now, where they
The
used
people
to live
pay.
in the woods.
Right, right. It's still their land. They're just sharing it with you now.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, that highway, those deer, that was their backyard. They haven't adjusted to it, or yet, really. And so,
Sure.
but it's, you know, I don't know. I don't know how you can avoid deer. Um, and you can't avoid cows in that situation. You come up over rise. I mean, all you can do now is to do a little bit bigger of a brake check before you crest it.
And ultimately that was my takeaway, as far as like blind corners, over hills, not seeing far enough to know what's coming at you, and getting complacent and real comfortable that that road's going to be clear, that corner is going to be clear. You can find anything in corners, from
Yeah.
gravel to cars, rocks, like any deer, anything could be in these paths of travel. And unfortunately, if you're going, 50 plus miles an hour, by the time you figure it out, there's really not much you can do about it. Maybe try to quick evade, but for the most part, it's probably going to end up with you getting hurt to some degree. So
Yeah.
that was my takeaway: is you can't trust necessarily what you can't see as much as you got comfortable doing. So it's been different to get back on the road, and I'm actually interested to see how well you fare. Quite a few of my students that I get, it's scars that they have. I find out after talking with them and kind of working with them, like, yeah, somebody convinced me to get on a bike and just try it and just give me some pointers. And I launched that sucker off a corner and hurt myself real bad. And now I'm here to how to properly learn a bike. But again, very gun shy, no confidence, don't want to turn, don't want to lean. They have actually made it very difficult for them to learn because they kind of tried it their own way and it had very painful repercussions. And now it's just a barrier, a mental barrier they have to eclipse before they can start trusting the bike again and
Yeah.
turning and leaning the bike again. So I see it more often than I would like. I guess if I could encourage anybody, if you have a spouse or friend that wants to learn, like, please give them some formal training so that they can, not hurt themselves, kind of a controlled environment, slow pace, learn environment, instead of, well, just try around the block and see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting, getting some training. When I took your course, I've been riding off and on most of my life, but there was so many things that I just weren't doing correctly. And it was really good. And that's the thing for anybody, and I'll just kind of say it for the audience is I don't care how long you've been riding, you're gonna get some useful knowledge from a rider's course. Is we get into bad habits, all of us do, and sometimes we need to relearn the basics. Like yeah, for me, turning my head. Yeah, yeah, you were correcting me on that. My head turn going into that, and it does make a difference. It makes a big difference. Think about it. We get lazy, we get complacent, and we get into bad habits. We need to learn you know, so
Agreed. And it'll actually help you cast that vision around that corner or wherever you're turning. So again, you can identify those cautionary things that you're going to hit, like deer, things in the road. You can identify them as quickly as possible, which hopefully will afford you enough time to adjust, brake, do what you need to do to possibly avoid that situation. So, but
yeah.
it also makes the bike turn easier if you turn your head.
Well, I'll be reviewing all these things that I need to learn with these flashcards that I just downloaded today so I can become an instructor here in the next few months.
Yes, yes. It's exciting. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I'm excited
It's so much
too.
fun.
So
It's to share that passion with people, man. It's I can't describe it. It's almost like teaching a child to ride a bicycle or something. You're rooting for them. They finally figure it out. They come back with huge smiles on their face. So they check back in with me a couple months later. I've got 3,000 miles on my bike so far. This is what's going on. I'm looking forward to more training and stuff. Just to have a new entry into the community of an individual, and just to see them fall in love with riding, man, it just warms my heart. I just love it so much.
well, good deal. Well, I still haven't downloaded it, I don't think, or I need to piece together the footage from our little jaunt up there in Kentucky that day. That was we got in a little interesting spots there. I remember. Went up that side road, that dead end with the big ditches. I went in one of them. That thing was deep. It
It
was
was.
deep.
Those washouts were nasty. I've got footage too. Maybe we should collaborate on some stuff. But that's, winter months come. What do you do when you're stuck in the house for several months and you can't ride? You get all that film out and you get into that editing, that
That's
painful
what I'm.
editing.
Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm going stir crazy. I couldn't ride for a month, and then once I was able, I spent the last month trying to figure out what was wrong with my bike, and both the forks were both of them were bent, both the lower tubes and the upper outer tubes. Both of those on both forks were bent, and I broke one of the bump stops off the lower triple mount.
Ooh.
Yeah, and a bunch of other stuff, but that's the main thing is so trying to figure that out. But I have forks on it. I saw a picture today, and I it's going to be better suspension because it's the
It
upgraded
is
2025 suspension for the 23 model. So
definitely helpful on the 10 rays. They definitely do better with it with some good springs on them for sure.
yeah. So and so, anyways, and then hopefully, and the little bike's over there too. So we'll see if it what all it needs. It might need a whole new top end, but yeah, I need to get back into some riding. So, well, I've really enjoyed talking with you about this, and for everybody, I shared his site, Learn to Ride TN, and on us, we're on Spotify and YouTube. Just like, subscribe if you like this content. We've got some more episodes. Just got as I was talking to you, Gunny, I talked to my friend in Thailand, and I'm interviewing him tomorrow. Not and see, this is hard because he is uh, halfway around the world. He's a day ahead, and so I'm going to have to interview him at 9 o'clock at night, which will be 10 o'clock in the morning for him,
Yeah,
a day
yeah,
ahead.
right.
But he hit a kangaroo, so there's a spoiler alert.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
sir. I would just say there's also Learn to Ride Dirt TN,
Oh,
which is
learn
his
to
dirt
ride
side.
dirt 10.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. So that's the dirt bike slash ADV side. So if that's what you're interested
Oh,
in, check us out there for sure. And I would love to help those individuals that want to get into the real riding out there in the dirt. Let me
that's
know.
right.
We'll make it happen.
All right. Well, thank you, Gunny, and we'll
Thank you,
see you
sir.
soon.